assessment. They might ask their more experienced colleague. They might go to their favorite search engine. They might use 20 other tools in order to perform the necessary research. And finally, they would take all of the information that they got and try to assimilate that into a cohesive assessment or insights, which they would pass on to the incident response team. All of these 3 steps, they have to do constantly, 20 minutes. Sometimes it'll make hours. Sometimes it'll take days. With Advisor, we want to be able to turn this into a couple minutes exercise. In order to achieve this, we had to build a solution that was both respected the privacy and data controls that an organization wanted to maintain, while also providing the power of external knowledge and applying it for a specific incident. So how do we achieve that? Well, Advisor, which sits on a QRadar environment, will leverage all of that local data analysis. That phase 1 of the task that an analyst does, well, Advisor assumes that role. It then takes discrete pieces of information, which we'll get into shortly, and these are the observables, like that red light that we talked about. From an offense, it takes those pieces of information, and only those pieces of information, these are external pieces of information, and sends that to Watson for Cybersecurity. From those, Watson for Cybersecurity can provide a threat report, insights, which can then be delivered back to the Advisor. Advisor refines that, prunes it, and presents it to the analyst. So this is a more pictorial view of how QRadar Advisor with Watson works with Watson for Cybersecurity. Those are both a mouthful. Once you get an incident, you see all the attributes of that offense from an event standpoint. We take only the external information. We pass it along to Watson for Cybersecurity. Different parts of the knowledge graph within Watson lights up, and from those, it can extrapolate what could be other indicators that might be relevant for that offense, sends it back, and Advisor refines it and presents it back to the analyst. So what data is actually used and what data is sent? So these are observable types. There was a technical training yesterday. If you have not seen that, please do. It showed how an organization might have custom properties. And if a customer has custom properties, they will have to map them to their observable types in order for it to be leveraged by the application, by the Advisor app. With Advisor, these observable types are used for both local and passing it on to Watson for Cybersecurity for external research. From a local, so all of this is for local. There are only 5 pieces of information that are sent to Watson for Cybersecurity. And we can actually simplify that further. IPs, source or destination, file hashes, URLs, and domains. So how does Advisor know that these are which IPs to send, which are external? Well, it leverages the network hierarchy. It respects how the customer has set up their network hierarchy and leverages that to determine what data it should send and what data it should not send. There are a number of controls and privacy and security setting pre-incorporated into the app. The first and foremost thing is that we mentioned that it leverages the network hierarchy. The administrator has the power to turn off certain observable types so that they're not sent to Watson for Cybersecurity. And it also allows the administrator to define some of their custom properties that can be used in the analysis. Of course, the more data that is configured, the better the results are. And note that it's only a handful of information that's sent. From a privacy standpoint, I mentioned that it was just external content. After the investigation, all of the data that's sent to Watson for Cybersecurity is destroyed. None of the data is maintained or persisted. Very important. We also do not track the information that is being sent. We're not mapping the observables that are being sent to a specific customer, to their IP, to their app, nothing like that. So there's complete autonomy. Last but not least, from a security standpoint, a secure channel from the app to Watson for Cybersecurity. There is no mixing of observables between customers, and it can only be, Watson for Cybersecurity can only be accessed by authorized QRadar Watson Advisor apps. Now, overall, we have what are the use cases Advisor is best suited for? I like this pictorial view because it shows the various points of a cyber threat, the initiation through some type of malicious asset, malware. When you're looking at malware, all the things that you can potentially use Advisor for is to kind of get an understanding of the classification of the malware. What type of, in a specific customer situation, they ran into a financial institution ran into malware with Prince of Persia malware, and that malware doesn't affect financial transactions. So they may have reduced the priority of that, or their response plan would be different. And there, the response plan would be more focused on what the users within their organization that may be affected rather than their financial systems. What vulnerabilities are being exploited? What are the compromised hosts? What does the attack sequence look like? At what point am I potentially catching this? And then, of course, suspicious activity. Now, suspicious activity could be the precursor for distribution of malicious assets, or it could be the result of something malicious taking place inside of your organization. So these are the three high-level categorizations of use cases that Advisor can be, that customers in our closed beta program have realized value for. Before we get into a little bit more on the use cases, come back to the use cases, I want to highlight what are some of the attributes of a well-tuned QRadar environment that's, in order to get the most out of Advisor, how customers can prepare themselves. Now, when you have a QRadar environment that's not well-tuned, you might, customers might see a large number of offenses that might be being triggered, okay? When that happens, some of those offenses are legitimate, and Advisor will work great. It'll provide them with the necessary information, the insights to address it. But in some of those, if the offenses are meaningless, there might not be any insights to provide, or there might be other extraneous piece of information that Advisor provides that may not be relevant. So it's important that the customer has an understanding, a cognizance of using QRadar with good use cases implemented. There should be good data sources, log sources that complement what the customer is trying to do. If you have an offense, a use case is defined into your QRadar offense model, do you have the right data sets? And we'll get into the log sources that we recommend. Are you making sure that the custom properties are defined so that the observable types are being sent to Watson for Cybersecurity? The network topology should be configured so that we're not leaking internal IPs out to Watson for Cybersecurity, as well as, because if it's internal IPs, I can't really provide any type of knowledge about those IPs or internal information. We put, it'd be nice if customers had about a few months of experience with QRadar or had some type of help from our services in getting them up and going with their use cases. The last one in this list is that QRadar must be used for monitoring external at the edge of your network where there's external activity participating, so egress activity. It doesn't matter for flows or events, being able to understand that. QRadar environments that are only for local monitoring are not well suited for Advisor. The console must have internet access, of course, because we have to talk to Watson for Cybersecurity, which is the cloud service. Now, there are a number of log sources that are recommended that often get a number of log sources that provide best outcomes for use in use cases with Advisor. If you look at what are the offenses that are triggered by QRadar that's best suited for Advisor, they include event logs coming that have some type of file hash, endpoint logs. Then you have events that are triggered off of from log sources, firewalls, proxies, antivirus, among others. Okay. So this should be a way to very quickly, within an hour or so, or even less, to look at a customer environment and say, are you guys ready for Advisor, or does the customer need to do a little bit more in order to get ready? One thing that I left out here, but I'll include before I update this slides again, is that the version of QRadar that we recommend is QRadar version 7.2.8. The main reason for that is QRadar 7.2.8 comes with X-Force premium license inbuilt, entitlement for it. That eliminates a lot of issues from previous versions of QRadar, because if the customer doesn't have X-Force premium, we kind of have to go through a back and forth into getting them the entitlement. They have to configure their app differently, et cetera. So we are, the prerequisite for QRadar Watson Advisor is QRadar 7.2.8. So a little bit more on the use cases. We have, if we look, we got all this information from our closed beta customers. We kind of roughly categorized some of the variations within these categories. So if you see some of these are a good reference point to identify use cases that Advisor can very effectively handle. Don't take my word for it. We have been getting a lot of positive feedback from our closed beta customers from various industries, energy and utilities, academics, distributors, service providers, banking, among others. So actually we have some of the other qualifying attributes here. We talked about a lot of this, so I'll jump over this. Some go-to-market, we did a webinar 2 days ago around what the customer experience will be in acquiring the solution. This is going to be one of the first solutions in IBM Security that's going to offer a 30-day free trial. The customers register for the trial, going on App Exchange, getting the premium Advisor app. The top, what you see on slide 31 shows you the customer activities. The middle section shows you the e-nurture, the email campaign to kind of monitor and provide support. And then the last one is the white glove. We will actually have our sales and our CTP community supporting our customers as they get through this trial process. Now, there will be a support escalation process as well. We'll have a self-serve support wiki and forum that for issues, troubleshooting, et cetera.